My name is Lila Hayes, and if you're reading this, let me tell you right now, you don't know betrayal until your own employer decides you're too expensive to keep around. It started on a Tuesday morning, the kind where everything seems fine until it isn't. I walked into the office feeling good, invincible even. My team had crushed our quarterly goals again, smashing sales targets by 23%. We weren't just meeting expectations, we were rewriting them. And yet, when I stepped off the elevator, the air felt heavier than usual. People avoided eye contact, their whispers trailing off as I passed. Something was off, but I brushed it aside. Office politics, I thought. Nothing new. When I reached my desk, an email notification blinked on my screen. Subject line: urgent meeting, HR and management. No explanation, no context. Just those words staring back at me like a dare. My stomach tightened, but I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe it was about next quarter strategy. Or maybe someone finally noticed how much coffee I drink and wanted to talk about expense reports. Anything but what came next. The conference room smelled faintly of stale coffee and anxiety. When I walked in, two people were already seated. Greg, the VP of Operations, a man who never remembered my name despite working alongside him for 3 years, and Rachel from HR, whose forced smile always made me uneasy. They gestured for me to sit down, exchanging glances that screamed awkwardness. Then Greg cleared his throat. "Lila," he began, dragging out my name as though it pained him to say it. "We need to discuss your current role within the company." I nodded slowly, trying to mask the unease creeping up my spine. "Okay, what's going on?" Rachel leaned forward slightly, her pen poised over a notepad like she was ready to take dictation. "As you know, your performance has been exceptional. However, after careful consideration, management has determined that restructuring certain positions will better align with the company's long-term goals." Restructuring? That sounded ominous. "What does that mean for me?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Greg hesitated, then sighed dramatically, as if firing someone was somehow a burden on him. "Unfortunately, Lila, your position is being eliminated effective immediately." The room tilted. For a moment, I thought I might pass out. "Eliminated?" I echoed, incredulous. "But I've been killing it. You can't just—" "We understand this comes as a shock," Rachel interjected smoothly, cutting me off before I could finish. She slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside were severance papers, neatly typed and waiting for my signature. "This package includes 6 months of continued health benefits and a modest payout based on your tenure here." A modest payout, as if 6 months' salary could compensate for years of dedication, as if they hadn't spent the last week celebrating record-breaking numbers thanks to my leadership. Rage bubbled beneath the surface, but I swallowed it down. Losing my temper wouldn't help, not yet. Instead, I focused on one glaring detail. "Wait," I said, leaning forward. "If my position is being eliminated, why am I getting fired instead of reassigned? Isn't that standard procedure?" Greg shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Well, given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" I pressed, narrowing my eyes. Rachel jumped in again, her tone clipped. "Lila, let's not complicate things unnecessarily. This decision is final." And that's when it hit me. Like a punch to the gut, the truth landed with brutal clarity. They weren't firing me because of restructuring or budget cuts. They were firing me to avoid paying the bonus I'd earned, a bonus tied directly to my contract. If I wasn't employed on the payout date, they wouldn't owe me a dime. The audacity of it made my blood boil. These people! I had poured my life into this company, sacrificed friendships, family gatherings, even my health for them. And now, rather than honoring their agreement, they were discarding me like yesterday's trash. Walking out of that building for the last time felt surreal. Each step echoed louder than the last, reverberating through the empty halls as security escorted me to collect my belongings. Co-workers peeked out from behind half-closed doors, their faces masks of pity and discomfort. Some offered weak smiles, others looked away entirely. None of them said a word. Not even Jake, my closest ally on the team, dared to meet my gaze. By the time I reached my car, tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Crying wouldn't fix this. Neither would anger, at least not yet. First, I needed answers. So, sitting in the driver's seat with my hands gripping the steering wheel, I opened the envelope containing my termination paperwork and read every line. Every loophole. Every clause designed to protect the company while leaving employees vulnerable. That night, sleep eluded me. Instead, I paced my apartment, replaying the events of the day over and over in my mind. How could they do this? Who did they think they were? And more importantly, what could I do about it? The answer came unexpectedly, sparked by a conversation with Mia, my best friend since college. Over wine and takeout pizza, I vented everything, the betrayal, the injustice, the sheer absurdity of it all. At first, she listened quietly, nodding sympathetically. But then, midway through my rant, her expression shifted. "Wait," she interrupted, setting down her glass. "Didn't you say your contract guarantees that bonus? Like legally?" "Yeah," I replied cautiously. "But without a job, I'm technically ineligible." Mia smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Who says you need a job to fight for what's yours?" Her words lingered long after she left. Fight for what's mine. Could I really take on a multi-million-dollar corporation armed with nothing but determination and a lawyer's phone number? Probably not. But damn it, I was going to try. The next morning, I called the only person I trusted to navigate this mess. David Chen, a sharp-witted attorney known for taking on corporate giants. He agreed to meet me at his office downtown, where sleek glass walls reflected the city skyline. Dressed in a crisp navy suit, he greeted me with a firm handshake and an equally firm demeanor. "Tell me everything," he instructed, settling into his leather chair. So I did. From the glowing performance reviews to the abrupt termination, I laid it all out, including my suspicion that the timing was no coincidence. By the time I finished, David's brow was furrowed in concentration. "If what you're saying is true," he said slowly, "then this isn't just unethical, it's illegal. They can't terminate you solely to avoid contractual obligations." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by skepticism. "Even if it's true, how do we prove it?" David smiled, a predatory flash of teeth that sent chills down my spine. "Leave that to me. But first, we need leverage." Over the next few weeks, David worked tirelessly to gather evidence. Emails, memos, anything that hinted at ulterior motives. Meanwhile, I focused on building my case outside the courtroom. Using LinkedIn and old contacts, I pieced together a timeline of suspicious firings, all high performers whose bonuses coincided with sudden layoffs. Patterns emerged, connections solidified. It wasn't enough to win outright, but it was enough to make noise. Noise turned into headlines when a local journalist picked up the story. Under the headline, "Corporate Giant Dodges Bonuses Through Strategic Layoffs," the article detailed allegations against my former employer, complete with anonymous testimonials from other ex-employees. Public outrage spread like wildfire, fueled by social media hashtags and scathing op-eds. Suddenly, the company that prided itself on innovation and integrity found itself drowning in controversy. Yet, despite the mounting pressure, they refused to budge. No apology, no settlement offer. Just silence. Until one day, out of nowhere, I received a call from Greg himself. "Lila," he said, his voice strained. "Can we talk?" For a brief moment, satisfaction coursed through me. Whatever he wanted, whatever excuse he planned to offer, it wouldn't matter. The tide had turned, and this time I wasn't backing down. "Sure," I replied coolly. "Let's talk." But as I hung up the phone, a nagging thought lingered in the back of my mind. Revenge was sweet, yes, but was it enough? Or was there something bigger at stake here? Something worth fighting for beyond personal vindication? Only time would tell. The meeting with Greg was set for the following afternoon at a neutral location. A quiet cafe tucked away in the financial district. It wasn't their corporate headquarters, but might as well have been. The air felt heavy with unspoken power dynamics. When I arrived, Greg was already seated at a corner table, nervously stirring his coffee like he could blend himself into invisibility. For once, he didn't look like the polished executive who had coldly delivered my termination notice. He looked diminished. "Lila," he said again, standing up awkwardly as I approached. His handshake was limp, almost apologetic. "Thanks for coming." I slid into the chair across from him, maintaining eye contact without saying a word. Let him squirm for a change. Greg cleared his throat and glanced around the room before leaning in slightly. "Look, I know things ended badly between us." Barely an understatement, I interrupted, raising an eyebrow. He flinched but pressed on. Right. Okay. Well, the reason I asked you here is we want to make this right. My stomach tightened. Was this some kind of trap? A PR stunt to smooth things over while they continued business as usual? I folded my arms across my chest, keeping my expression neutral. Make it right how? Greg hesitated, then pulled out a folder from his briefcase and slid it toward me. Inside were documents outlining a settlement offer, reinstatement to my former position, full back pay for the months I'd been unemployed, and notably the bonus I'd originally earned, paid out quarterly moving forward. My heart skipped a beat, but I forced myself not to react too quickly. There had to be a catch. And what's the catch? I asked bluntly. No catch, Greg insisted, though his voice wavered. We realized mistakes were made, and we're trying to rectify them. Publicly. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Publicly? You mean because your stock prices are tanking and investors are calling for heads? Don't insult my intelligence, Greg. This isn't about making things right. It's damage control. His face flushed red, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. Fine. Yes, part of this is about protecting the company's reputation. But that doesn't mean we aren't sincere about wanting to fix this. You deserve better than how you were treated, Lila. We both know it. For a moment, I let his words hang in the air, weighing them against everything I'd endured. Part of me wanted to throw the folder back in his face and walk away, to let them stew in the mess they'd created. But another part, quieter yet persistent, reminded me why I'd started this fight in the first place. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every employee who'd been pushed aside, undervalued, or discarded when it suited the higher-ups. If I walked away now, what message would that send? So say I agree to this, I said slowly, tapping my fingers on the edge of the table. What happens next? Do you honestly expect me to just go back to work like nothing happened? Greg shook his head. No, of course not. We understand. Trust has been broken. That's why we're proposing more than just your old job. We're offering you a seat at the executive table, a chance to help shape policies that protect employees from situations like yours. It sounded too good to be true, and maybe it was, but there was something in his tone, a flicker of vulnerability that made me pause. Greg wasn't the mastermind behind all of this. He was just another cog in the machine, scrambling to keep it running. Maybe, just maybe, this was an opportunity to dismantle the system from within. By the time I left the cafe, I still hadn't given Greg an answer. The offer was tempting, but it came with strings attached. Strings I wasn't sure I could untangle. Rejoining the company meant swallowing my pride, working alongside people who had betrayed me, and risking another fall if they decided I was expendable again. On the other hand, rejecting the offer outright felt like letting them off the hook. They needed to feel the weight of their actions, not sweep them under the rug with a shiny new title. That night, I called David to discuss the proposal. As always, he listened carefully, asking pointed questions to ensure I considered every angle. If you take this deal, he warned, you'll be walking into enemy territory. Are you ready for that? I don't know, I admitted, pacing my apartment, but I can't shake the feeling that this is bigger than me. If I can use this platform to create real change, wouldn't it be worth it? David sighed, his voice softening. You're playing a dangerous game, Lila. But if anyone can pull it off, it's you. His confidence bolstered mine, even as doubt gnawed at the edges of my mind. Over the next few days, I weighed the pros and cons, consulted trusted friends, and ultimately came to a decision. I would accept their offer, but on my terms. No more dancing around the truth. No more pretending everything was fine. If they wanted me back, they'd have to earn it. When I walked into the boardroom 2 weeks later, it was with a newfound sense of purpose. Gone was the woman who had sat in silence while her hard work went unrecognized. In her place stood someone sharper, fiercer, and unafraid to demand accountability. Every eye in the room followed me as I took my seat at the far end of the table, directly opposite Greg. The tension was palpable, but I welcomed it. Thank you for having me, I began, addressing the assembled executives. I'm here because I believe this company has the potential to be better, not just for its shareholders, but for its employees. But potential means nothing without action. And action starts with transparency. I spent the next hour laying out my vision. Stricter enforcement of contractual obligations, clearer communication during layoffs, and initiatives to foster loyalty rather than fear. Some nodded along cautiously. Others shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. By the time I finished, the room was eerily silent. Finally, Greg spoke. "Lila, we appreciate your candor, and we're committed to supporting these changes, as long as they align with the company's goals." "Good," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily, "because if they don't, I'll make sure the world knows exactly why." As I left the building that evening, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and unease. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally fighting on my own terms. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, policy drafts, and late-night strategy sessions. My presence in the executive suite sent ripples through the company. Some welcomed it as a breath of fresh air, while others bristled at the sudden shift in power dynamics. But I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to hold them accountable. One afternoon, as I reviewed a draft of the new employee protection policies, Greg stopped by my office unannounced. He lingered awkwardly in the doorway, clutching a folder. "Got a minute?" he asked. I gestured for him to sit, curious about what brought him here. Greg rarely sought me out unless it was absolutely necessary. Once seated, he placed the folder on my desk and slid it toward me. Inside were internal memos detailing conversations between senior leadership about cost-cutting measures, including plans to phase out bonuses altogether. "They're trying to quietly dismantle the bonus program," Greg admitted, his voice low. This isn't just about you anymore, Lila. It's systemic." A cold fury settled in my chest. So this was their endgame, to renege not only on individual agreements, but also to strip away one of the few tangible rewards employees had left. No wonder they'd been so eager to bring me back into the fold. They thought I'd play along, keep quiet, and let them manipulate the narrative. "Well," I said evenly, closing the folder, "they underestimated me." The next board meeting was unlike any other. Armed with evidence from Greg's folder and additional data I'd gathered, I laid bare the truth. Projected earnings reports showed record profits despite claims of financial strain. Internal emails revealed deliberate attempts to circumvent contractual obligations. And surveys conducted among current employees painted a damning picture of fear and mistrust. "This isn't leadership," I declared, standing at the head of the table. "This is exploitation. Employees are the backbone of this company, yet we treat them like liabilities to be managed. That stops now." The room erupted into murmurs, some defensive, others shocked into silence. One particularly resistant board member, a smug man named Carter, leaned forward, his tone dripping with condescension. "And what do you propose we do, Lila? Throw money at everyone who feels slighted?" "No," I shot back, leveling him with a steely gaze. "I propose we honor our commitments. Pay people what they've earned. Create pathways for growth instead of fear. And if anyone disagrees, then perhaps they should consider whether they belong in a leadership role at all." Carter opened his mouth to retort, but before he could speak, another board member chimed in. "She's right," said Elena Rodriguez, a relatively new addition to the team known for her progressive views. "We can't keep operating like this. The public backlash alone will destroy us if we don't change course." One by one, others began to nod in agreement. Even Greg, though visibly nervous, offered cautious support. By the time the meeting adjourned, a tentative consensus had formed. The bonus program would remain intact, and sweeping reforms would be implemented to protect employees' rights. Months later, the transformation within the company was undeniable. Morale soared as workers saw tangible proof that their efforts mattered. Layoffs became subject to strict oversight, ensuring transparency and fairness. And for the first time in years, employees felt valued, not as cogs in a machine, but as human beings contributing to something greater than themselves. As for me, I found myself reflecting on how far I'd come. From the day I walked out of that building feeling betrayed and powerless, to standing before the boardroom demanding justice, I realized I'd reclaimed more than just my dignity. I'd rediscovered my voice and used it to spark meaningful change. On a crisp autumn morning, I stood on the rooftop terrace of the corporate headquarters, watching the city wake up below. David joined me, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You did good, Lila," he said, handing me one. "Better than anyone expected." I smiled, sipping the warm brew. It wasn't just me. People stood up when it mattered most. That's what made the difference. He chuckled softly. "Still, don't sell yourself short. You didn't just survive, you thrived. And they'll remember that long after you're gone." "Gone?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. David shrugged nonchalantly. "Hey, I'm just saying, you've got options now. Maybe it's time to think about what's next for you." His words lingered as I gazed out over the skyline. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine a future beyond this fight. A future where I could step back, knowing I'd left things better than I'd found them. But for now, I wasn't ready to leave. There was still work to be done, battles to win, and voices to amplify. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying those who wronged you. It's about building something stronger in their place. And that, I decided, was worth every sleepless night.